Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. Apologies in advance for any noise you hear. My downstairs neighbors are moving today, so there's a little bit of noise in the background that can't be helped. Today I'm going to be reviewing volume 2 of No Matter How I Look at It, It's You Guys' Fault I'm Not Popular. This is what the cover looks like, and it has our main character on it, Tomoko. She's that girl right there, and I'm going to assume you're at least a little bit familiar with volume 1. Going into my review of volume 2, you can watch the review on my channel. This is by Nico Tanigawa, who I believe is actually a conglomeration of two people. So Tomoko's high school debut is off to a rocky start. She was convinced that she was going to have a wonderful high school career where she was going to be wildly popular with both the girls and the boys because she has played a lot of dating sims and knows all about what it takes to be popular in high school. At least she thought that she did. This series is super relatable for anyone who had embarrassing moments in middle school, embarrassing moments in high school, or has ever been in a situation in life where you just felt like everyone was having more fun than you were the weird one, and also started to get that social pressure that maybe you needed to change yourself because who you were wasn't enough. Most people, once they reach adulthood, I don't want to say get over it necessarily, but start to realize that who they are is plenty enough. They're unique and they're wonderful the way they are. And there's always people out there to make friends with. People want to connect with other people. People want to be your friend. And getting yourself out there is part of being an adult. And you can always make new friends. And that's just something you learn as you grow up. Tomoko is still in her first couple weeks of high school, so she has not quite learned that lesson yet, and we are watching her struggle through this very awkward transition in her life, and it is done in a way that makes you sympathize with the main character, but also makes you remember perhaps some of the more embarrassing things that you did in high school, which can be a little bit uncomfortable at times. However, volume 2 is a step up from volume 1, and I think that's true for most manga series. I think a lot of manga series take volume 1 to kind of lay the scene, lay the characters, lay where the plot's going, and advance it from there. And so as a result, volume 1 is rarely the most interesting volume in the series. It should just be enough to get the reader hooked to read volume 2. So I do recommend if you read the series, get 1 and 2 at the same time and read it so you can get past the exposition and the character introduction and actually get into the series. Personally, I would recommend reading 1, 2, and 3 together just so you can kind of really flow into the story and see where it's going. Another thing I want to know is if you're reading the series and think 1 was kind of dark, 1 was a little sad, 1 reminded me of being lonely, should I read 2? 2 is also going to feel this way, but I promise that this series does get lighter. It's just at the beginning of this series, Tomoko, our main character, is really at her lowest. She's in a new environment and she's desperate to have basically any human interaction, and she starts doing things that most of us can relate to but also feel very embarrassed by. And I do promise this gets better and Tomoko grows and learns. It has a lot of character development, but we have to go through some awkward, painful growing pains in the process. So in this volume, Tomoko is still dealing with the social isolation, with the loneliness, and she's dealing with all the hormones that puberty brings. And she's not doing it in this cute, fun, and quite frankly, unrealistic way, which I feel like sometimes this is portrayed, particularly in manga, but in other YA series too, where going through those early teenage years is depicted as fun and everything always goes right. And the main character always has a boy who's falling for her immediately. And they look perfect all the time, their hair looks fine. The struggles aren't necessarily realistically depicted, both in manga, other YA novels, shows about teens. As anyone who was a teen remembers, it's not always like that, and I feel like this series is a very accurate depiction of how things can really be for a lot of people, and I think for that reason it'll really resonate with a lot of readers. However, volume 2, because we're through volume 1, can kind of start getting into the more humorous aspects. Tomoko, who is desperate to fit in, is trying all sorts of things to make her life seem more interesting than it is, while also trying to get attention from people at school. She has a younger cousin who comes to visit whose name is Ki-chan, and she told Ki-chan last year that she had a boyfriend. And now she's kind of regretting it, and she's having to do a lot of things to get Ki-chan to believe her story, things involving a vacuum to give herself hickeys, among other things, and she just kind of gets herself in a sticky situation that any adult reader can see coming from a mile away, but you can see the thought process in Tomoko's head to reach this point. It's just very embarrassing and awkward, but also a little relatable to experience. There was another point in here where she was out at some sort of sports event and she was playing with some ants and the ants wound up all over her. I think the humorous aspect of the series that I do remember being there is definitely coming out in this volume. So I think that this will be a little lighter in that regard than volume 1, but I do think we're still dealing with Tomoko at her lowest, and the humorous points are just going to keep us going as Tomoko learns and grows throughout this series. I do recommend this series. I do think you should read volumes 1 through 3 if you are looking to start this series, but I do think it's a series worth reading, and I hope you give it a try. If you have any thoughts on volume 2, I would love to hear it. Please put it in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.